Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams. So glad that you're joining me tonight. I pastor a church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. The name of the church is called Calvary 316. If you're local, come hang out with us one Sunday morning. Our service is at 10:30. If you're not local, but looking for a good church to maybe check out online, we live stream our service. You can find our live stream at facebook.com/Calvary316 or our YouTube channel, which is Calvary316.live. So if you're local, come hang out with us one Sunday. If you're not, join us online and be blessed by our service. I'm joined in studio, as always, by the man that needs no introduction, Pope Creighton Vaughn. How you doing, Pope Creighton?
I am doing well. It
feels like I caught you off guard.
Yeah, I think our stream might be having trouble. Vimeo is giving me all kinds of troubles tonight. So I apologize if the stream is jacked up. It'll be on podcast tomorrow. And if it's too bad, I will re-upload a video.
You'll re-up the video. So explain kind of how the show works for those that might be watching for the first time.
So basically what happens is I will ask a question to Zach and they don't know what the question is going to be going into it. Zach is going to make it into a Bible study and maybe explain the stuff because some of the stuff that I bring up is off the wall. And then we will discuss it, and that kind of goes back and forth for about an hour. And we have a good time. And it's a madhouse usually. It's just very subdued. It's
and
weird.
what is I know it's very laid back tonight. What is also fun about the stream itself, so this is a podcast. We are live streaming the recording of a podcast that gets released on Thursdays. The reason that we live stream it is so that you, the audience, can interact with us in real time. Again, we might be having some issues with the stream. We're not 100% sure. At the same time, you can drop notes on the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, outlawradio.live, you can drop comments there. Creighton's monitoring that. Or facebook.com/the radio outlaw. You can also leave comments on that thread, which is super cool. You can always email thoughts, questions, whatnot to our official Outlaw Radio email address, which is popecreighton@gmail.com. Joined in studio by the merry band of brothers. Nicholas is not with us today, so Vinny's jumping back into the fold. Different chair, moving from the couch to a different chair. Vinny Himes, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Good to be here.
How's your week going?
Fantastic.
Crazy, off the wall?
Yes.
Understood. Deal Daddy Derek.
We're here, baby.
I see that you and Creighton went all corporate-y on us tonight.
Yeah, man, gotta go collars. Gotta go see 316 black collars.
It's all about merch.
It's all about the merch
it out,
for sure. Hey, do you like my shirt? I got this for my birthday. World's okayest pastor.
Accurate.
Thank you, Kyle. I will take it. I could have been given a lot worse. That is for sure. Also joined, we've got Spice Daddy.
Howdy.
You know, you have a general look to you. It's kind of like, and I say this with respect, like a chubby Indiana Jones.
Well,
Accurate. That's what he was going for.
Yeah,
I know. I mean,
yeah, it's not that I'm mean.
Always earth tones.
It's not that I'm mean to, but when most or half of your life is spent in some outdoor capacity,
Doing what kind of work?
Well, whether that be archaeology or summer camps or being a park ranger or, now that I work in a gun store, it just kind of
it's just your look.
Works. Yeah, it's not that I mean to. It just happens. I'm just not good with bright colors.
Can you imagine him with some like hot pink or something?
Salmon.
Yeah. Also joined Kyle. How you doing, brother?
Howdy. Doing good.
So you filled in on Sunday. You taught on Sunday. What did you teach on?
Seasons of life. Really just digging into something that everybody experiences, and just figuring out what seasons are for, what their purpose is, and
Now you took an interesting approach. Like how did you approach the?
I went into it originally. I got curious, just thinking about when you talk about periods of life and things like that. A lot of times you hear pastors teach, or you'll read things about like how to approach a season, how to go into a season, or what to do while you're in it, the kind of attitude you should have. But there's not a lot that's said about how to finish things strong. And so the whole idea started with just looking at the closing of all of the epistles in the New Testament and kind of comparing and contrasting and seeing if there were commonalities or themes. And there's definitely some stuff there.
Very cool. Very cool. So the live stream of that is on their church website. I believe so. Calvary316.tv.com.org.net. So I encourage you.
It's also on the Calvary 316 YouTube channel.
Also on the YouTube channel. So if you're interested, go check out the archive and be blessed by that study. Before we get to your topic,
naturally,
I've been chewing on an idea, and I think it's kind of a funny idea. I'm not really sure how this really developed. So I went to a pastor's conference, the East Coast Conference, a couple weeks ago, and like there's this. So within Calvary Chapel, so Calvary Chapel began, Pastor Chuck, late '60s into the '70s. So you had a lot of guys that were getting saved in the '70s as young men, and then they were kind of being trained up, whatnot, and then they went out and started churches. Maybe the earliest, the late '70s, but into the '80s. So like my dad started a church in 1980. So now here 2023, that group of pastors, so what you would call like first generation Calvary Chapel pastors, they're all now in like their 70s, late 60s, 70s, some of them early 80s. There's this whole big thing about, and it was funny. I had one pastor that I was talking to, and he was like, "Yeah, we're in the middle of transitioning. I'm handing the church over to my son." And I was like, "There has to be a better way to say this, that you're transitioning. You are from California. I'm not sure that you're articulating what you're trying to say by saying, yeah, I'm transitioning."
The word's a bit muddied now.
It is muddled for sure. But like the whole idea of the transitional, like transitioning from one pastor to another because you've gotten old or whatnot, or you're wanting to try to reach the next generation. Like, I'm not sure I like really understand this, or like I guess I understand the sentiment. But at the same time, it's like, why don't you just keep pastoring? Like, why do you have to transition? Like, you're still called, you still got breath, you can still preach. Are you struggling because, there's not more young people coming into the church? I'm not sure that the solution is for you to quit and hand it over to a younger guy, hoping that you can, like, why not just keep going? It leads back to that conversation we've had before, where it's like, what's wrong with churches dying? Like, they have a group of people, a community of people. They have their pastor loves them. They love their pastor. They live life together. The pastor baptizes their kids and the grandkids and marries them off. And like, they just live this beautiful temporary life together. And then they just die out and a whole nother church comes into being. Like, I don't know about, like, it's funny because my dad, we went to a conference years ago, and it was about, like, they had invited a few groups of pastors to kind of speak to this whole idea of transitioning your church from one generation to the next. And they assumed that my dad and I were doing the same thing. And the funniest part was like, no.
Surprise.
Like, I have no interest in that. Like, I'm doing my own thing. And that dude is going to die in the pulpit. He'll pastor Calvary Chapel Stone Mountain until he's dead. That's when the transition will happen, because he has a call in his life. Why force him to stop? Now, again, you get into certain situations where a pastor is no longer physically able to carry forth the tasks, or his mental acumen begins to slip. I think some of the final years of Pastor Chuck was kind of sad because he wasn't the same guy. And yet that was the decision. He wanted to keep preaching, and the church loved him. And why did it have to transition? So anyway, that's been on my mind. I would love thoughts, feedback, comments. I mean, you guys have anything rough? I know that's an off the wall topic. We'll get to what Creighton wants to bring up, but something I've been thinking about, like, what's wrong with just being in the pulpit till you die?
I mean, I think, is it wrong for a pastor to have an option to want to retire at some point? Like, if that's their work, and that's not the main purpose, but like, do you see something wrong in general with pastors thinking about, I'm going to do this until I'm, 70 years old, and then I want to take my last few years and enjoy it and pass it off to my son? Like, is there something wrong with that thought process?
Listen, I'm not saying that there's anything, like, this is not right or wrong.
Yeah.
to me, and this is very true though, is there seems to be like this weird pressure
to keep up with the generations
within the Calvary Chapel movement, and particularly because that's all I can speak to.
Yeah.
Where you have a bunch of older guys that feel a pressure of like, I'm not doing a good job reaching the younger generation. Maybe I need to get out. Like this.
Well, that's God's job anyways. I think it all comes down to what's the purpose? Like why are you trying to transition? Is it because you're trying to do God's work? Like you're trying to play God and direct things, or are you doing it because God's calling you to another portion, another season of life?
Yeah. Regardless
I
of who you put in that church, like whatever transition period you decide to do, whatever you guys want to do. And like, it's God at the end of the day, he's had no problem establishing churches for the past however many years, thousands of years.
Well, you bring up, Kyle, you bring up an interesting thought about just the retirement angle. I think the concept of retirement, give me a biblical example of that. Like, give me any precedent in scripture of like the substantiation of our Western idea of, hey, you've worked enough.
I think they had to get their heads chopped off to get out.
I have a hold on.
No, I
hold
don't
on,
think
because
so.
I can't give you any bibiblical definition of dating. That doesn't mean that I necessarily think we should go back to
Well, don't even
arranged
change.
marriages. What I think that what you're dealing with is I think you should be able to have, if you're a pastor, if you're aging, regardless of the health of your church, like I think it would be totally normal and like a normal progression of things if your parents left Stone Mountain and literally just traveled the world teaching and doing nursing stuff. Like that would make sense.
They wouldn't have retired.
Hold on. It depends on how you define retirement.
Okay, well,
Because
in our Western context, how do we define retirement?
And I don't think I'm ever going to be able to retire. My parents will never retire. So I don't know what you mean by retirement.
Well, we have an idea in America about retirement.
Retirement looks different for everyone. Everyone's retirement is different. I think you can retire.
I don't
from being
like
a
the
pastor
idea
and
of
still minister.
I don't
to
like
people all
the
over
word
the place.
retirement.
Why? It's a weird semantic
Because
hill
the
to die
word
on.
itself implies that you're tired and over. Like that somehow. Like, for example, and again, I don't want to get into the semantics, and I understand the consideration of that. But like, we do have this idea of like, hey, I've lived my life, I've worked hard, I've raised my kids, I've done life, and now I'm retired. And so now I'm done doing these things. I'm done working, and I just want leisure. I want to spend the last 10 years of my life on a golf course or on my boat fishing. I've worked hard. I've worked long. Now I'm out. There are pastors that approach it the same way. Like, hey, I've done my deal. I've saved up. Now the last few years of my life, I'm not in ministry anymore. I just don't like the whole idea at all. Now there can be transitions of work. You get, like, you see that within the priesthood. Like they would serve. They had an allotted time that they would serve. And then, but they didn't retire. They transitioned to a new season of ministry within a different context. Like what you're describing with my parents, they will continue to minister regardless. Like my dad will not retire. He'll never use that word retire because he's not going to stop doing what he's been called to do. He's not retiring from his calling. He's going to continue forth in that calling, even if that calling morphs and changes.
Yeah.
I think I've seen so many older people that were so involved in church, so involved in ministry. And then like, I don't know if there was like this dynamic where they just didn't feel wanted anymore or cherished, but it was like they got to a point where now they're no longer doing anything with the church. Like I'm retired and like, my involvement in church is not the same. My engagement is not like I've retired.
I think you're discussing two different things.
Yeah, you're not talking about
because the first thing was a pastor retiring, which I think is fine. Like, cool.
What is that? But define that, because I don't find that cool.
I mean, stepping away from the pulpit, regardless of what they do after they step away from the pulpit, I think that is fine.
Yeah, you actually
why
said at
wouldn't it
one
be?
point in time that, the pastor's calling, blah, 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 they're doing their calling and they can't just retire, a calling can change and whatnot. Like, absolutely, a calling can change, where a pastor might at one point in time be pastoring a church and then like the calling a season of life can change. A calling can change to where like, okay, now I'm going to
pastor the golf club,
or, no, like, I'm going to fill a role as an elder in the church, like, or, continue in a role like that, or move on to traveling ministry or something like that. Like, that's absolutely possible. You could still have to fulfill your calling to God. But it doesn't mean that you're stuck in once you commit to the pulpit.
You're retired.
Yeah, but once you commit to a pulpit, you're not stuck in the pulpit for the rest of your life.
I 100% agree with that. But what I'm saying is you're not retiring.
You're moving to a different portion of calling. So once again, it comes down semantics. To what's the reason.
I don't think it's semantics because I see it.
Hold on. Here's why I think it's semantics, because your second point was something completely different. Your second point was people who...
You have to speak up.
Your second point was that people who retire often then become less involved in their church. That's not what either of us are talking about. You're talking about people who like quiet quit from a church. You're not talking about retirement.
I am broadening the conversation.
Right, but I still think you're talking about people who quiet quit from a church.
Even I think pastors do the same thing.
That is very different from retirement. I don't think those things are the same thing, and I don't think you can conflate them. Because one of them is essentially walking away from a church.
You still have to be louder. I can't hear you.
Can you not hear me? I can hear myself very well.
I can't hear you.
He's getting close to retirement age.
Because one of them is like basically walking away from the church. The other is leaving the pulpit to allow someone else to come up because you no longer want to do it, because you are no longer
a right and a wrong reason for it.
Like I think it's fine if you want to walk around the pulpit and then still be involved in the church, even if it's in a lesser role than you were as a pastor. I think that's very different than leaving the church for all intents and purposes because you're retired.
Is pastoral ministry rooted in a gift of the Spirit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does the gift of the Spirit change because you got older? Like, it's an anointing of the Holy Spirit. Does that gift go away? And then if it doesn't, don't you have a responsibility to continue forth? Again, it might look differently. And I go back to what Kyle was saying, and I think it's a good point. Like, hey, you might not. Preaching is a very small part of what a pastor is.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in our culture, we've kind of convoluted that because we've emphasized what happens behind the pulpit as being the chief job of a pastor. Teaching is a part of pastoral ministry, but it's only a part of it. So yeah, can there be a dynamic where, listen, man, I went through a season last year where, pastoral ministry changed for me because I couldn't get behind the pulpit. But as soon as I got home, like, I'm still a pastor. Like, and I have a group of people that God has placed into my life and I've been placed into their life for me to pastor. I can't get behind the pulpit. I can't physically do that. But you guys were coming over. I went into more FaceTime ministry than I've ever done. I was communicating, talking pastoral ministry. And again, I would say that if there's an anointing and a call, does that just go away because you reached a certain age? I would say no. Can the context of its application be different? Sure. But I wouldn't call that retirement. I would never use the word retirement.
I absolutely would.
Because retirement would... Okay, so retirement... Let's use the Western word, retirement. I'm no longer going to be getting a paycheck because I've saved money. You can retire from becoming a pastor when you get old enough to do it. You'll still be pastoring people. You're not going to be getting a paycheck. That's retirement.
You are retired.
Yes.
And in fact, it has a legal definition that I am now retired and I can draw on whatever retirement savings that I have. Like, this is a very weird semantic argument, and I'm very confused by how long it's gone on.
I see exactly what Zach's getting at. Zach will never retire because Zach has a spiritual calling. Joel Osteen will probably retire. Rick
Warren will retire.
But once again, it's a semantic argument because what you're talking about and what Joel Osteen is going to retire.
So you're connecting employment, but you're connecting like, well, what if I won the lotto tomorrow? Would I ever take a paycheck from Calvary 316 again? No. Would I have retired? Not at all. I'd be living off of a retirement fund, whatever that is.
So you would be
I would not be retired.
Legally you would. And once again, why get back to this is a semantic argument?
I wouldn't even legally be retired.
I think where you're getting at, you're not
argument.
Officially employed by at that point anymore.
Which is not retirement.
But I don't think you're ever
I think retirement's a mindset.
As a pastor, you're following your spiritual calling and doing what you were called to do.
Hold on.
But
What did you
it later, which will work if you want to keep working on trying to get it back
I
up.
will.
Retire
I get what
Vimeo.
everybody's saying. This is kind of
Vimeo retired.
Well, it's not, but to me, get back to the and we'll riff on this for just another few minutes so Creighton can get this fixed before we introduce the topic. So before we transition, I'll give Creighton a moment here.
Full circle. So I don't think it's, and again, maybe we're getting trapped in this semantic thing. Get back to the heart of what I'm trying to say. The heart of what I'm trying to say is that, like, we do have this approach within our culture of I'm retiring from what I've spent my life doing. And now I don't have to do anything anymore. I live on a golf course. I see a lot of them out there. They retire, and guess what? I think it's a waste of years. Now, I'm not saying that you can't enjoy certain things and be able to spend time with your wife or go visit grandkids that are somewhere else, whatnot. But like this idea, this mindset of like, I'm no longer in a battle. I'm no longer fighting. I'm no longer valuable. Like within the Christian ideal, the retirement, we don't even have retirement in the kingdom because we keep working. Like there's work. Your race still isn't over.
There's purpose. There's movement. Now that can change the context of what it is, but we do have this idea just within our society. I've paid my due. I've worked hard. I've done this thing, and now I'm done. And I get to just take it easy now for the next 10, 15 years, however amount of money I have, and I'm out. And I think that seeps into the way that we often view our Christian experience. When we get into elder years, well, I'm not relevant anymore to a younger generation, or I'm not physically able to put in the hours that I used to, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, or the songs that I like to sing are old. Like, wait a second. I mean, I think, the church has racial problems. You drive around town, there's black churches, white churches, Korean churches, Mexican churches, based on race. Martin Luther King said that the most segregated day in America is Sunday morning. And there's a sad truth to that. But I also think what is equally a bummer is that you have this generational division within churches. You have old churches, you have younger churches. And I think that's such a sad thing. Because you have older churches with so much wisdom and no energy. And you get younger churches with so much energy but no wisdom. And like the Bible talks about the old men, ministering and raising up the young men, and the older women with the younger women, and that there is this beauty within church community. Like there's value. And I guess my point is that your ministry is not over. Your work is not done. Ever. But as a Christian, there is no retirement. You're not taking it easy. The battle doesn't stop. You're in the war. Now, maybe you're not on the front lines and a young man needs to be, doing something. But like you have value and purpose. And I just think that we have this kind of Christian culture